Reality shifting is like driving out in the middle of the western United States, pulling up a map of the closest gas station on your GPS, seeing that it's only 20 minutes away, 20 miles away. You're in the middle of nowhere, and you start driving, and you get to where you think is 20 miles away, but the road keeps creeping and creeping and creeping. And as you get to where the gas station is supposed to be, your map will recompute and it shows you the next closest gas stations and the one that you are destined for 5 hours away. Welcome to the world of being a reality shifter. There are many times that you will seemingly almost run out of gas and miraculously barely get to a gas station to refuel, having to draft along the way if you happen to see other travelers, and very often you do not. The GPS does very weird things, including showing blank spaces on a straight road from point A to point B. You're looking for an address that is on a road. You're on that road, and you keep driving by where that address supposedly is, and it's not there, and there is a blank spot on your map. Isn't that amazing? Another fun one is outside of Phoenix. Lots of vortex areas around Arizona, Sedona, Death Valley National Park, to Cali, from Texas. It's beautiful hotspots. Anyway, I found this, subdivision that was incomplete. And you know how when they're incomplete, they have roads that are like halfway built and then just stop. And you look out and there's undeveloped land. Well, I was perceiving that there were issues with technology and humans were being hacked, and the experience was being taken over by some group that was, I thought that they were really asinine, and they were using AI to pretty much capitalize on this process. And it seemed as though AI would just like insert friends and family that you knew and would play with you. But instead of it being entertaining, it was always leading to like some hellscape. It was really annoying. It was really frustrating. So in one of these instances, I was trying to ping intergalactically for help to let them know that there was an issue. And so I pulled over at this undeveloped section and got out of my car and was pacing in front of my car for, until the world melted, is what it felt like. And I got back in my car after I blew off some steam, and I definitely was quantum shifting and quantum traveling. And sometimes you will have to pull over. A, because your car will malfunction. I've had that happen as well. B, and in fact, sorry, let me back up. All of your electronic devices will malfunction. During some heavy shift events, the battery itself will seem like it's being drained. Your car will not accelerate. It'll seem like it has this heavy drag to it. The battery of your devices, like your phone, will just like, you could have a full charge. And when you start doing some heavy shifting, it'll be like, it'll suck everything out. So it's strongly advised to pull over, really, because your car will just like go into neutral or the engine will cut off. Another thing that happens is that you will get very, very sleepy. I call this the Rip Van Winkle sleeps. And you don't want to be driving. You can't, actually. You have to pull over. And you'll feel it. It's almost like this electromagnetic wave of like a rhythm in your brain is disrupted and you're impossibly tired and you have to stop. And in fact, the world around you stops. I've seen it. It's really interesting. Everybody goes to sleep and everybody slows down, and all of the like point of sale systems stop functioning as well. It's really interesting. Another thing that will happen is that everything will keep working, but you will experience disruption events that I call incongruencies. And these are really, really important to not only look out for because they can be very, very extreme, but they can also be very subtle depending on the level of congruency disruption. So when you think about your cognition processing time, it does so in a very linear fashion. And when you start to experience reality shifting, it's kind of like having ADHD on overdrive, where the entire world is disrupted, down to you set your phone down and you go to pick it up and it's not where it's supposed to be. This registers an error response in your brain, and depending on the level of, it's actually in the prefrontal cortex, and this is what I believe is disrupted in OCD, just for those neuro geeks out there. The same function is operating when you're reality shifting, and you have a mechanism in your brain that is keeping your concept of space and time and is predicting it. And so when you start to deviate, you start to register these error responses in your cognition. And it can be really extreme when you're doing some heavy quantum tunneling or quantum shifting or quantum jumping, or it can be like, oh, my ADHD is acting up again. This is why those who are neurodivergent have an advantage, because you're already comfortable with losing stuff and things not being where they're supposed to be. And there is a certain degree of comfort that is required to successfully reality shift. Now let's get back to that subdivision. So I blew off some steam and I went back into my car. Literally, I didn't leave my vehicle. I mean, I left my vehicle, but I didn't leave the area, right? I was just walking in front of my car and telepathically communicating with intergalactic support teams, and because I was interacting with the reality layer where those lines were open. They're not always open, but that was open. You'll feel it. You'll know if it's open for you. And so I got back in my car and I reached down for my phone and it wasn't there. And then I realized after tearing my car apart that I couldn't find my phone. It was literally gone. So then I started thinking, how do I retrace my steps? Nobody approached my car. I was the only one there. It was me and the world and reality shifting and my personal belongings. Nobody else around. And so I started retracing my steps in my mind, realizing that I had reality shifted and I didn't even know how I was going to get back to the last gas station, just in case my memory wasn't encoded correctly and I left it in the bathroom. And I was like, how am I going to get back there? A, I'm driving aimlessly, and B, I've reality shifted. So I don't even know if the map, if I pull it up, if I'm going to be able to find the gas station there. This is real life. When you're reality shifting, you stop at a place, you might not find that place again, especially if you're doing some heavy shifting. So I obsessively look through my car and I can't find my phone. This is a really big incongruency, right? I'm panicking because my phone is everything, as is in most people's lives in our modern day, right? Like, we need our personal handheld communication device, especially when I didn't have a hotel booked and I didn't know how I was going to get anywhere. I didn't know how I do like everything on my phone. So anyway, long story short, I stay in that spot for, I don't know, probably another hour or two. And I continue with reality shifting. I try to let go. This is great advice. When you're in a situation like this, just let it go. Just let it go. And your brain will not want to let you do this, but this is a very important part of becoming comfortable with incongruencies, is letting them happen and realizing it's going to work out. Even if you don't know how it's going to work out in that moment, even if your game plan is disrupted, even if you have to go with the flow and you have to change direction, just wait it out. And so at some point, I don't know how many hours later, and I was busy taking care of stuff, working on manifestations and working on cognitive maps and reality shifting designs and things of that nature, submitting them up to the collective to try to make the process a little easier for people. So I went into my office space, but I was still in the end of the world. This is what it felt like. End of several worlds is what it felt like. Anyway, eventually my phone reappeared like magic, and I was on my merry way. So another scary thing, though, is when you totally, this happened to me, lose your car. And sometimes reality shifting, you'll feel this, requires you to move. And it will require you to either drive or walk. And I was in one of those walking reality shifting modalities. And so I parked my car and I started walking and I was shifting. And this is very easy to do in vortex areas, by the way. And it was really, I was like walking into another world. It's really hard on the body. Your muscles and your bones will feel really tired. And I don't know about you when you do this, but for me, I looked ancient. I took photos of me during this time period and I seriously look unrecognizable because it feels like you're walking for miles and miles, and you do, but it feels like it's a million miles more than what your physical body is registering, because you're pulling yourself and possibly through different gravitational fields and electromagnetic fields. And it is so taxing on the body. It is very, very painful to do. And I walked into another version of Sedona where my car was not where I left it. It was gone. Poof. It was gone. I had to literally sleep on the street. Kid you not. Anyway, so those are pretty significant incongruencies. But smaller ones are when you shop in one store and walk just, across the street to another store, and the timestamps or the dates are different on your receipts. And you're like, oh, I walked backwards in time. That's amazing. That's amazing. How does that happen? Well, when you're reality shifting, these are the things that you live for, which is why it's really, really important to become comfortable with incongruencies, because it's very disorienting, and you need to be able to keep your cool when you are interacting with the world that you're walking into. You need to be normal AF, right? You really do. And so it requires a certain level of proximity guessing. You're walking into a world, you're seeing it, you're feeling it out, and you need to fit in there. And sometimes you don't, and that's okay. That's all right. I remember landing at a destination and realizing that I was very, very out of place in terms of dress, in terms of how I looked, and even how I smelled. Sometimes there are worlds that have a certain scent to them, and this is why you've just got to play it cool. You just have to read the room as fast as you can, or read the populace and try to fit in. as best as you can, even though you're going to feel very, very out of place. Just do the best you can. So handling these incongruencies at the smaller level is really important, in my opinion, for being able to handle them at the upper levels. When you really start having some massive, massive shift events, your ability to, like, let's say you're an actor, or you have the ability to put on a role, or to be in theater and to like do improv. It's kind of like that. The better you are at being able to do improv or shift into a role, the better you're going to feel as you are doing some heavy reality shifting, because there's like something that clicks in your brain, right? That allows you to shift your personality, to shift your gait, the way that you walk, to shift your manner of speech in order to reflect the environment or to reflect the expectations. And those people who are chameleons or who are good at theater or acting will have an advantage. They just will. But part of that is letting the error OF response in your brain fire without getting too overly attached or anxious. Normally what happens is that if you can try this out. You can have somebody actually take an object of yours without telling you that they're going to do that and place it in a random location, like your keys, And if you have kids, then you probably have already experienced this. And you will freak out internally, especially if you're trying to get somewhere on time. And if it's really important and vital that you find it at a certain point in time, then the level of stress and anxiety that you feel at not finding that object, your phone, your keys, your wallet, your purse, will freak you out. And so when you're reality shifting, it's like that. Dealing with incongruencies is like that feeling, all the way down to small disorienting events. So your ability to look at a clock and see that it's an hour ahead or behind what you're expecting, your ability to be cool about that and to shrug it off as a reality shifting event is absolutely integral and essential to your ability to do much bigger shifts. And when we're very grounded in our everyday routine, this is actually really challenging, even for me as somebody who's experienced. I had an incident recently where I came back from the store and I looked at the clock on the microwave and I was like, double take? I was like, that's not possible. And then what happens when you observe your reaction? And I had no place to be, right? Literally, if I lost time or gained time in that particular day, it would have been totally fine. But still, because I live a more grounded existence now, my mind, when it did that double take, immediately started filling in the blanks, and then immediately started logicking and rationalizing what could have happened. This is the normal process, especially when you're like immersed in an everyday routine and you're not doing a lot of heavy reality shifting. It's like a different cognition. And so part of your job as a reality shifter to uncap yourself, to uncap this ability, is to look for moments of incongruencies and to start to train yourself to be able to handle them as reality shifting events. And so, for example, when I looked at the clock and my mind immediately started retracing my steps, and I was like, it can't be 1 o'clock. It's got to be like 3 o'clock. I immediately started thinking about the quality of the light, about how long the grocery store took, about the traffic, about everything. I replayed everything. And then because I accounted for all of the time in my linear experience and memories, I then jumped to this is why metacognition is so vital. I then jumped to an explanation. Oh, we must have lost power. And when we lose power, the clock reverts to 12. And that would account for the discrepancy of time based on when I left, which was around 11:30, and when I returned. That's about right. It made sense. And then I could feel this sense of ease. This is normally what people do at a very unconscious level. But this is your task as a reality shifter, to take that process, which normally occurs, to let it happen. And that's explanation one. That's the logic rational one. We like that one. That keeps us bound to our linear binary existence, and it's how we function in the everyday normal world. And in fact, it's a great thing to hold on to. It really is. It's a great practice. But there's also another possibility in that your reality shifted. So now we hold two possibilities and we just observe them, and we observe the believability of them. For my case, when looking at the microwave clock and seeing the discrepancy, the most believable explanation for me was that we lost power. That was the most plausible one. We'd say it's like 95%, most likely. And then 5% likely that it was a reality shift event. And the goal is to develop the practice, because in another situation, especially when you start reality shifting, it could be reversed. And so what you want to do is you want to have the foundational thought pattern adjusted to expand and allow for reality shifting opportunities to occur without your logic rational mind just overriding it all. And so that's why we develop the practice of actually manually, whenever there's an incongruency, manually going through and almost like setting up this little program in your mind to run. It takes practice at first, but then you can make it run on autopilot. And you do so by creating the awareness around it and by manually focusing your attention on the fact that there is a rational, logical explanation, and now we're going to include another one in the framework of reality shifting. And we're not going to worry about the probabilities of right and wrong. We're just going to say, okay, there's an alternative explanation. And then over time, when you are actually confronted with the reality shifting event, what happens is, it's like so awesome when this happens. It's magic. Then you already have the foundational groundwork of thought that's laid down. And so then you open up your mind to actually be able to see and perceive and categorize a reality shift event as an actual reality shift event. It's amazing. The journey is so fun. It really, really is. Anyway, so listen, I am a reality shifting coach. And if you're interested in upgrading your consciousness and your mind to be able to handle and not only just handle, but like actually explore different realities, feel free to reach out to me. My email address is sacredjourneyproductions@gmail.com. Okay, we'll talk soon.